Hello, you're being able to hear, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So let us start today's class. I would request the students to come on time, meaning that around 8, 9 students have only come, or say 9, 10 students have come, 11, 10 students have come. So it would be better if they come on time. Are you being able to see the screen? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So last day we were discussing, we had discussed the branch and bound strategy, in particular a depth first branch and bound strategy for optimal hardware software partitioning. Now then, after we studied the algorithm, we were discussing a few variants of the algorithm and how we get different algorithms based on how we branch out from each state. In particular, we said that we could branch depth first using for holding the newly generated states of the state space tree. We could have a breadth first search, breadth first branch and bound search if we hold the states in a queue, the queue, a queue of states containing the newly generated states, and we could use a best first approach, neither depth first not nor breadth first, a best first approach if we hold the newly generated states in a priority queue based on the fn values. Now, can somebody, any one of you, just let me know if you appreciate what are the pros and cons of each type of approach, and in particular, um, how is best first different from depth first or breadth first? So, so what are we trying to do in best first? What are we trying to achieve in best first that we could not achieve in depth first? Is this best first strategy better than a depth first strategy, for example? If so, why? Any one of you?
So in best first, the first solution that we receive shall be the best solution. So we would not need to uh, search further in the tree.
Yes. So, and why is that so? What does best first try to do? You answered correctly.
So like in best, it the first path to the leaf node that the best first search gets has the like the maximum.
Okay. You talk about the selection of the next node. How do you select, means for me and for everybody else? Just let us know, how does the next node which will be expanded selected for best first? Who is selected?
So I don't know that.
You don't do that. Then how did you say the previous answer?
So you had told about that previously.
Ah, yes, but I did not ask. You just learned that by heart. I understand that I did not give you the proof. So see, best first strategy, as I told, expands that node next, which has, let us say, the highest value of fn. Now, what is fn? At a node, at any given node, what is fn? Fn is the upper bound on the gain or upper bound on the cost that is achievable from the root to any leaf that you can reach from the current state. Mark my words, all my words here are important. What did I say? What is Fn? Fn is an upper bound. Why? Fn equals to Gn plus Hn. Gn is the actual cost of coming to this state from the root. Hn is an upper bound estimate of the cost of reaching any leaf node from the current state. So what is Fn? Fn is an upper bound of the cost, upper bound estimate of the cost that you will have from the root through the current state to any leaf that is reachable from the current state. Right? Now, therefore, if you keep the current set of now who are you expanding? Not depth first, not breadth first, but the one which has the highest value of Fn. So you are choosing that node and expanding which has the highest value of this upper bound. That means you are expanding that node at any given time which has the highest possibility of having the best node. Are you with me on this? At any given time, you are keeping the nodes in a priority queue sorted on their Fn values, and you are expanding that node which has the highest value of the Fn. So you are expanding that node, you are exploring the subtree of that node which has the highest value of Fn.
Hello?
Are you with me on this?
Sir, you are on slide number 36.
I am on slide number 36. I am just talking.
Okay.
Are you with me on what I have just said?
Yes.
So if so, then tell me what are the pros and cons of this best first search against, let us say, depth first. So why is it better in many cases than depth first? Why? Because it chooses that node which has the highest value of the upper bound, and therefore you are moving first. It is not depth first, not breadth first, but it is still a first. It is best first. You are choosing the best node, the node which has the best value of the estimate. You are choosing that node first. Hence, it is best first. Okay. So that is why it is best first, and best first tries to quickly go to the best node first. That is it. The beauty of this. However, in doing that, it may sometimes be slower than depth first search. Can you just think and tell me why can this be possible? If I just have told you that best first search, or you have just told me that you have appreciated the advantage of best first search. If you have appreciated the advantage of best first search, can you tell me why can it be slower than depth first search? Depth first, branch and bound. And remember that depth first, branch and bound, breadth first, branch and bound, best first, branch and bound, all of them will give you the optimal solution. It just differentiate the algorithms are different in terms of the time it will take to generate the solutions, optimal solution. And in that case, I am saying that depth first search can sometimes provide you faster solutions than best first search. Why?
So whenever we are choosing the next node, then we have to calculate the maximum bound again, whereas that is not the case in depth first search.
Depth first also, when you are going below, you are finding the FN value. Otherwise, how are you pruning? Even in depth search, you are finding the upper bound, right? Otherwise, how are you pruning?
But sir, we reach that. For example, sir, if I'm at n, suppose I'm at one node, then I have an option of uh,
Tell me.
okay, sir. Let me think a bit. Sorry, sir.
Hmm. Anybody else would like to try? Anybody else?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in best first, we are trying to reach the optimal as soon as possible by considering the expected value, that is Fn value.
Hmm.
So we are stopping, we are assuming that the first
Oh,
one will be the,
once more. In depth first search, you are.
sir, in best first search, sir.
Hmm.
In best first search, we are opening the nodes according to the Fn value. So that is according to our expected value of what expected best value of what we should get. What we are taking the first solution which we get as the best one, and we are terminating the solution at that point, sir. Where yeah,
Best first in best first search.
yes, sir.
So best first, that means best first is better than depth first.
Yes, sir. So
So
that
what
first.
is the opposite? That best first can
Hello, sir.
sometimes, and better is only in terms of what? Better can only be in terms of
Time.
give time, because both give you the optimal solution.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can I try?
Yes. Somebody.
Sir, because sir, it will expand the nodes exponentially. It needs more time, more space. Best first search. Hello.
Requires more space.
Yes, sir. But it will give the solution in less time than depth first. Depth first expand less nodes, but it will need more time.
Always. You are saying always.
Sir, always, sir, I'm not able to think in all
Yeah.
cases.
Okay. 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 See, there is a subtle difference. Yes, I have told you enough why best first is good, but there is drawback.
What are you doing, Sharab? I'm fine, Carl. How was your day yesterday?
Yes, somebody is disturbing the class. Somebody is not present in the class, I think. Yeah. So one thing that I did not tell you about is that, means I told you, but I did not explicitly tell you, you require to sort the priority queue. So each extraction insertion is at least a log n operation. In depth first or in breadth first, you see, you are just taking the nodes, inserting. After expanding, you are calculating Fn. Now, there are two things. Whenever you expand a set of nodes, you have to create the Fn values of all the nodes. Suppose now you're expanding two nodes, but you could have trees which expand say k nodes. Whenever it expands, the next task you have k options. So you will expand k nodes. For each of those k nodes, you have to calculate their Fn values, and you have to insert that into the priority queue, which is a k log n operation, right? Because you are inserting into a priority queue. And when you are extracting out from the priority queue, it is again a log n operation. If you think of depth first, what you're having, it is an operation of O1. You're inserting k nodes in the last in first out order and taking out one value out of it. So This one, although you are having the advantage of trying to expand the best node first, so that the best leaf is reached first, but the the overhead that you have to do, that you have to maintain for doing that, to always search for who is the best node next, leads to an overhead. On the other side, best first quickly goes to the leaf. And if you have a good enough current solution, then there will be a lot of pruning. If the initial solution is good, then you can have a lot of pruning and you may quickly reach the best node very quickly. And yes, best first will go on finding out the best node, and when it reaches a goal, it will be the best. That is true, whatever I have said, although I have not given you the proof. But in doing so, it is not guaranteed that it will always move depth first. It will always move towards the leaf. That is not guaranteed. Who will be the best next can be, you may sometimes move in a partially level wise, partially depth wise, because who will win, who is the best FN node among the nodes that are currently there in the priority queue is not known. So you may have in initial exploration, may always finding the best node, you may not always move directly towards the leaf. Against depth first, which may often very quickly go and find the an initial good solution and then start a lot of pruning. So although best first will many a times will give you a good solution and a quick solution, and it is that therefore it is so famous, it is not guaranteed to be always better than the better than the depth first branch and bound approach. Are you with me on this? Have you understood what I wanted to say?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's proceed.
Sir, but I have one doubt here.
Yes, let's go.
Sir, if we are using best first and it is going randomly to the best next node.
It is not going randomly. It is not going randomly. But you still tell your concern. Yes.
Sir, sir, it is going like depth first or breadth first or using both partially. So,
Right.
sir, sir, how it will know that this is the first without expanding that node?
That is what we are you that will depend on the priority queue, right? And who are you extracting from the priority queue? The one with the best FN value. That we told. It is not random.
Okay,
But the who wins next in terms of FN value may not be depth first, right? The it can so the one to be the node to be expanded may come from different levels, because now you are not depth first or breadth first, and nodes from different levels in the state space search tree can be there on the priority queue. So in breadth first, you were saying that in one level you are expanding everybody and then moving. In depth first, you are saying you are moving directly towards straight towards the leaf and you are extracting. But in this priority queue, just try to visualize, you may have nodes from various levels and anybody can win in terms of the FN value. Because suppose you have somebody is best now, and
sir,
then
yes,
just let me complete this sentence. Some node is best now in terms of the FN value. You have expanded that and got two other nodes. Those two other nodes will again have two FN values, different FN values. Those FN values, it has more information than your previous FN value. Why? Because it has actually gone one level deeper. So those FN values could very well be lower than the current FN value. So what did I tell? I am at a certain node at which my node has won in terms of the FN value. I am the winner in terms of the FN value. Hence, I have expanded my current node and got two more nodes as children. Now these two children have more information than my parent node. Why? Because I have actually explored one level below. Now, therefore, with more information, I can now find that my upper bound is not as good as actually what I had thought before. So the Fn values of these children nodes could be lower than my parent node. Now, if that is so, there is a possibility that now other nodes will win and not any one of these two new nodes. Any one of these two new nodes may not win in terms of everybody, because there are many other nodes and you have inserted that into the priority queue. So many other nodes from the priority queue can win now. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Therefore, you are not moving breadth first or depth first, but not randomly. You may be somewhere in between, and you are essentially expanding that node which has the highest Fn value. You need to visualize a bit what I'm trying to say and see the state space tree, what is happening. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Can,
So, right, if you have some question, yes, quickly.
sir, yes, sir. Sir, only 1 minute. Sir, if sir, let's suppose the winner is in the second or second level. Hello. And if we are trying to do this from best first. Hello.
Right.
So, sir, how we know that in which way, if in which pattern, in depth first pattern or in level by level pattern, we have to go, because we don't know where is the winner, and we have to expand.
No,
Or
where is the winner? I don't know meaning. I know where is the winner because I know the Fn values of all nodes that are there currently in my priority queue, my heap. I have a max heap of all nodes. For all of them, I know their Fn values. The key of that max heap is Fn. I have sorted my max heap. I have arranged my max heap in terms of the Fn value. So at the root of the max heap, I have the node with the highest Fn value.
yes,
Now,
sir.
when I expand that node, I will get two more nodes, and then they will be inserted again in the max heap. But then
Yes,
the other nodes which are there can also win and go to the root. Whoever goes to the root will be the next one to be expanded.
yes, sir. I got.
Okay. Right. So now let us see how does the choice of the heuristic function affect the search. Now, how see I designed the heuristic function for this hardware software partitioning that we currently did for this small problem. I designed that. Now, how did I design that upper bound function? I found out who has the highest hi by si value. I sorted that and went on taking the nodes from that sorted list until my bound on resource is exhausted. This is what we did. Remember last day, I went on choosing the nodes tasks with the highest hi by si values until my available resource is exhausted to determine my hn. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now let us say I instead of doing this, what I do is, suppose I have the remaining amount of resource at a given time is, let us say, r dashed. My remaining amount of resource is r dashed, and the first element in this list is, let us say, h2, some h2. So I have h2 and s2. h2 by s2 is my value. h2, sorry, yeah, h2 by s2. Right now let us I do this. I say my upper bound is, the first node is h2 by s2. h1 and h2, the task 1 has already been allocated. So the next one, the first one in this list is h2, sorry, t2, and therefore I have this h2 and s2. And I say my upper bound is this. My upper bound is uh, r dashed by S2 ceiling into H2. This one. This one is my upper bound. Firstly, tell me no, you are with me or not when I say that this is an upper bound. R dashed is my remaining resource. S2 is the first node in the list. So sorry, T2 is the first element in the sorted list. So H2 by S2 is the task with the highest H by S value among all tasks in the list. Right? So therefore, R dashed by S2 will tell me how many times S2 come within R dashed. So if taking the taking the nodes from that list is an upper bound, this is also an upper bound. This is also an upper bound. Are you with me? Yes or no? That this is also an upper bound. If no, you did not understand, tell me, I will tell again. But I need your I need you to appreciate that this is an upper bound. If you don't understand why this is an upper bound, I will tell again. But tell me yes or no. Somebody.
No, sir.
No. Okay.
Sir, could
So,
you please give a numeral example? Means r dash is equal to 4 or type. It will be much easier to understand them.
right. So let us go back to our example.
Yes, sir.
Say at this position. At this position, y1 has already been allocated. So I had I have nodes T2, T3, and T4. I found Hn to be 28. The upper bound was 28. How did I obtain? I took T2, T3, and partially T4. Right? So I took 3 amounts of resource from the 9 from T4. I took the whole of T3 and whole of T2. And therefore, I got 28. So 10 plus 12 plus 6. Do you remember here how we got Hn equals to 28 at this place?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So now at
Yes,
this
sir.
point, what was my actually remaining resource? 13, right? What was my remaining resource? D was equals to 15.
13.
2 was actually allocated to the to task 1. So my remaining resource was 13. Remember?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So then I'm saying that if 28 is an upper bound, then 13, which I told to be r dashed, 13 divided by 4, which is SI, because the first element in the list now is T2, T1 has already been allocated, right? So if T2 is the first element is in the list, it has the highest H by S value, right? So what I'm saying is this is also an upper bound. So 13 by 4 is what? 13 by 4 ceiling is your 4, right?
Yes, sir. It would be
4.
40.
So 4 into 10, 40. This is also an upper bound. If 28 is an upper bound, 40 is also an upper bound, right? It's a bad upper bound, but it's an upper bound on the actual cost that is achievable. On the actual cost, hardware cost that you will gain by using up the resource 13 amounts of software resources is upper bounded. If it is upper bounded by 28, it is also upper bounded by 40. Don't think why I have found out this. Just think that yes, this, just tell me yes that this is also an upper bound. It's a bad upper bound. Hello.
Yes, sir. Like,
Yes. right? Now, what is the difference between a 28 and a 40? The difference is this, that to generate this 28, you had to scan through the whole list. If you have n tasks in the list, order n tasks, you have to scan order n number of elements and then get the upper bound. However, this upper bound you got in O1 time, in constant time. Are you with me? That is 40 I got with an overhead of constant time. That 28 I got with an overhead of how much? Big O of n. Are you with me on this? Both are upper bounds, although one is a bad upper bound, one is a good upper bound. Yes or no? What happened? Yes, right?
Yes.
Yes. So then the point is, you have a crude upper bound which could be quickly generated, and you have a better upper bound which took more time to generate. Now the point is, the one is a lower upper bound and the other is a crude upper bound, which means the value is higher than the best upper bound. So both are upper bounds, but lower the upper bound. That means closer is an upper bound to the actual cost. You say that that upper bound is better. However, to get a better upper bound, which is closer to the actual cost, which is a lower upper bound, to get that, you have to spend more overhead in terms of computational effort. Now, this is a small example, and it's a toy kind of example where you are seeing that it is crude. How much is this? Is also a linear scan. But then you can, it could be so that to generate a very good upper bound, you have to spend big O of n cube time, whereas a crude upper bound can be generated in linear time, and the value of n is in the order of hundreds. Then that difference becomes more stark, right? So then you have a choice of, will you use a crude upper bound or a good upper bound? So why do you want to use a very good upper bound? Because that gives you more possibility of pruning. Why? Because you are saying that when do you prune? When the cost of the current base node is greater than equal to the upper bound. The cost of the current based solution, sorry, the cost, when the cost of the current based solution is greater than or equal to the upper bound at that node, you prune, or you kill the search of the subsequent search tree. Am I right? Are you with me here, or you have forgotten? You want me to tell again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir,
Yes,
we will.
sir. Yes, yes. So then the point is, if you have a good upper bound, which is lower in value, closer with respect to the actual solution, then you have higher possibility of pruning. Now, if you have a 40, then current based solution being less than 40, current based solution being greater than equal to 40 is lower, it has a lower possibility than the current based solution being greater than or equal to 28, right? So if so you have higher possibility of more pruning. However, at each node you have to generate this upper bound. Now, therefore, at each node you have to spend higher amount of computational effort to find that upper bound. So there is a trade-off as to how good your upper bound will be and what is the amount of possible pruning that it can yield through that upper bound, right? So you can have a very good upper bound, but if using that very good upper bound, if you cannot prune heavily, then you are actually at a loss, because that very good upper bound also took a large amount of overhead to generate those upper bounds. Is this okay? I want a yes once more.
Yes, sir. So
Yes.
but in this case, like this new upper bound which we chose, it will probably never prune. Like if we see, I
That's
think
the point is I just want don't think of this particular
yes,
example.
sir.
This is a very
Yes, sir.
small example.
Yes, sir.
But the
Got
point
it.
here is that when you apply it to bigger, more complicated problems, you will have in practical situations when you will face with designing a branch and bound strategy for your problem at hand, you may be faced with a choice of what type of a heuristic function should you design for your problem. Then you have to choose whether will you choose a very fancy upper bound function or a crude upper bound function, depending on what kind of pruning that it is possible, that may be possible through that upper bound, right? Okay. Right. So how does the choice of a heuristic function affect the search? You have got an understanding of this. See, all this can come in your exam, so make this understanding very clear. If you do not understand, you can ask, but this understanding has to be, once I have gone through that, you should now be able to answer when I ask. Okay. The next is the tasks that we considered in the previous example are independent. What happens if the tasks are precedence constrained? So the same set of 4 tasks we have that we took in the example, this was the set of 4 tasks and they were considered to be independent. Now let us say I make the my problem one level higher. I say that the tasks are not independent like this. Like the adaptive cruise controller we had, all the tasks were interconnected. The output of one task goes to the input of another task. That means one task executes, produces output, which is taken by the next task, and it then works on that output and processes further and generates another output. So let us say this is what. Let us say in this case, T2 receives input from a sensor and then it processes something, it produces our output, and the output goes to T1 and T3, and then T1 and T3 both produces outputs which is taken as input by T4, and T4 produces an output. Let us say it goes to an actuator. This is the scenario, and you want to do a hardware software partitioning. So then and let us say this small problem, this small additional problem, that you have only one hardware device on which you will implement all your hardware, means you have an hardware area, a chip where you will put all your hardware devices. So you have a fixed area, right? Hardware functions you will put on that, and you have only one software processor. And let us say this software processor and this hardware chip which is containing the hardware functions and the software processor is connected through a bus, so then all these data now so what happens if T2 and T1 are both in hardware? So hardware to hardware, no additional cost. However, if T2 is implemented in software and T1 is in hardware, then you have an additional communication cost depending on the amount of data and depending on the bandwidth of the bus. Okay. So now I have changed the problem. I have just taken the problem one level higher. What happens when there is non-negligible data communication time overhead between hardware and software? So the problem is now this. You want to minimize the area, you still want to minimize the total area cost of the hardware components. So summation 1 minus yi into hi gave me what? Gave me the total hardware area cost of components that are implemented in hardware, the original problem. By the way, the original problem and the modified problems were same, but we are now going to the next level. So we are dealing with the original problem. So it's still the original problem that you want to minimize the total hardware area cost, subject to what? The first component is what? Is the total software execution cost. And let us say Cij. Cij is the data communication time cost between node Ti and Tj. If Ti is implemented in software and Tj is implemented in hardware, or vice versa. If Ti and Tj are implemented on two different platforms, one in software and the other in hardware, then the amount of the data communication time between hardware and software, that is equal to Cij. Okay, are you with me? If that is so, yes, if that is so, then you see, let us see this whole term in between, summation over I, summation over j, yi dot 1 minus yj into Cij. What does it tell me? So if when will Ci, so you see that for all cases, if yi equals to 1 and 1 minus yj equals to 1, then the value of Cij will be added in the summation, otherwise not. So in the second term, so summation over I, summation over j, yi into 1 minus yj will sum up the data communication time costs of all communications for which your parent is in software and the child is in hardware. So the parent task Ti is in software, that is why yi equals to 1, and the child task Tj is in hardware, that is why 1 minus yj is 1. For all such communications, for all such type of data, your the Cij, which is the data communication time cost, will be added to the execution time cost, total execution time cost. Are you with me? Yes, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Yes. Similarly, if you go for the third term, what is happening? If your parent is in hardware and your child is in software, so the Ti is in hardware and Tj is in software, then the third term will come into play. You understand that Ti cannot be in both hardware and software. So either yi equals to 1 or yi equals to 0. Similarly, either yj equals to 1 or yj equals to 0. So if both are in different platforms among Ti and Tj, so either the second term for a given value of yi and yj, if either both of these terms can be 0 or any one of these terms can be 1. It cannot be the case for a given yi and yj value, both the second and third terms will both be 1. It cannot be. Means both be non-zero. It cannot be the case. Are you with me? That both the second and third terms for a given value of yi and yj, both the second and third terms can never be equal, never be non-zero simultaneously. For any given value of yi, so I am considering any single pair of Ti and Tj, right? Both can be 0 for a given value of yi and yj. For a single task pair, I am considering single task pair, right? Understood? Yes? No?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So if it is yes, then see that I have just taken the problem one level higher. So there is one issue here in this problem, that I am saying that I have only one software processor, and when it is processing, data communication is not happening in parallel, which is a bit synthetic. It is not not realistic. In most of the cases, data communication can happen when the software or hardware processing is going on. We are saying that no, that is not the case. When software processing is going on, then data communication does not happen. Data communication does not happen, and vice versa. So therefore, this whole subject to this part has to be less than equals to capital D. We will take this problem one level higher also. We'll take this problem one level higher, and when we go to the scheduling problems. For now, let us stick to this problem, that I have a hardware area, I have a software processor, and if both are in different, and if there is a task pair which has an edge between them, and if they are in different platforms, one in hardware, one in software, you have to incur a data communication time cost for that. And therefore, if I have a bound on deadline capital D, you have that subject to will now become this. Okay. If this problem has been understood, we now go to the last point to think, which is, before shifting to heuristic problems for this, I will just try to say that all these heuristic and stochastic, whatever we do, we are essentially doing a state space search. We are doing an optimal state space search for branch and bound, and the algorithms which we will subsequently see, they are heuristic state space search problems. But the state space search problem, applying any of the techniques that we study, is a very generic technique and applied in a lot of places, including various places in embedded systems and cyber physical systems. I've tried to include an example to make you appreciate as to how the state space can be built in different, means the state space will be different for different problems, but essentially these algorithms are universal, because given a problem at hand, we have to only generate the state space for that. If you are able to generate the state space for that, then you will be able to solve that problem also using the techniques that we have. And hence A star, etc., are called universal problem solvers. For example, let us say and it can be applied to various forms of embedded systems problems, right? So for example, let us say, can you think how the state space related to some other problem would look like? This was the point to think. I have given you one such example, where let us say you have just a stationary robotic arm which is fixed to the ground, and that robotic arm has only two joints, a shoulder joint and an elbow joint, not an ankle joint or an elbow joint. Let us say a shoulder joint arm, so it is a elbow joint. So you have a stationary robotic arm with a shoulder joint which can rotate, and the shoulder can rotate vertically. The shoulder can rotate vertically, and you have an ankle, elbow, which can rotate in a direction which is perpendicular to the shoulder. Okay. So you see that the shoulder, if you just discretize the problem, let us assume that you have 360 different positions for the shoulder. Now for each of the 360 different positions of the shoulder, you have 360 different positions for the elbow. Now each position of the shoulder and each position of the elbow combined gives you a new configuration. So you think of the state space that it is generating. Each configuration of the shoulder. So like for the task, you had two alternatives. You will take in hardware or software. Now for the shoulder, you have 360 alternatives. For each of the 360 alternatives of the shoulder, you have 360 alternatives for your elbow. Are you okay with me? And let us say only one of this configuration is the best way to pick up an object from the ground. And you have to find what is the best, what is the least force that will be required, which is the position of the shoulder and elbow combination that will ensure that you will have to incur the least force for picking up an object from the ground. This is the problem you have to solve. Now you see that after you have generated the state space, you can again apply branch and bound that we have just studied to find out which is the position, the state space search technique you can apply to find out which is the combination of the shoulder and elbow position which is optimal in terms of requiring the least force to pick up an object from the ground. Are you with me? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes. So right. So this points to how this approach of state space search is universal and can be applied to various problems. Even the constraint satisfaction problem internally builds a state space search. It gives your solvers that you apply, let us say Cplex or other solvers that you use, they internally define the problem as a state space search and they solve it and give us the solution. But why don't you look into that? Because they apply various different optimization techniques to solve that state space search, and they do it by themselves, and we formulate the problem and give it to the solver. So formulating the problem becomes the design for us, and the solving internally is done by the solvers themselves. But many a times you, because your state space could be the structure of the state space, you know best. Sometimes it so happens that your search design, your algorithm design, what function you will use for this generating of the heuristic estimate, in which order will you search the branches, how will you branch out, all these things can be customized by you, and that gives the best solution. So your generic solvers that even the industrial grade solvers that you provide may not give you the best solution because they are generic. For any kind of state space, they are applying the same principles and trying to solve. Right. With this, we don't have time today, so we will stop. Tomorrow, I will start with a heuristic approach. I will tell you a heuristic approach towards state space solving, and if possible, I will also complete the stochastic approach. So now we will see all the mechanisms before going to scheduling. Then we will go to task scheduling on hardware platforms, both hardware which are homogeneous, means same type of processors, multiple processors, on single processors, on multiple homogeneous processors, on multiple heterogeneous processors. Then we will see on when do we have to do scheduling of processors and buses together, or communication and this one buses together, sorry, communication and processor scheduling together that we have to do. Then we will see that if the communication system is not fully connected, it is a shared bus system, then how our formulation changes, and we will try to see various realistic problem formulations with more and more understanding that will go on evolving through these classes. So, but before going into scheduling problems, we will first see with hardware software partitioning and application of this heuristic state space search approach and stochastic heuristic state space search approach. Okay. So tomorrow we will do that. So today fine. Today up to this. Thank you. Any questions?
No, sir.
No. So the attendance is dwindling. Either I'm teaching very bad or there is something else. Otherwise, I am expecting more students. If you know your friends who are not coming to class, please ask them to come to class, because the things that I am discussing will be there in the exam and you may not get it in any book that you search, because many things I am telling from my experience also. So those things you may not find everything in book just like that. Most of the things will be there in books, but studying from books always does not help. So coming to class is the best way to avoid a lot of work from your side. You don't have to study much if you come to class. Okay. So bye today.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.